The time is now for regional governments to develop and implement disruptive and forward-thinking program concepts, policies, and platforms that fast-track the development of a Caribbean technology economy. At the core of this, my friends, transformation must be the sustainable maximization of our most highly valued assets. You know them, and I know them. Our people, our ideas, our geography, our climate, yes, our climate, and our culture.
Good evening, everyone, and welcome to CLIP Speaker Series. My name is Crystal Legrand, and I am your moderator from the Caribbean Center of Excellence for Sustainable Livelihoods. The Caribbean Youth Livelihood Internship Program, better known as CLIP, is part of the Strengthening Disaster Resilience in the Eastern and Southern Caribbean project designed and implemented by the Caribbean Institute for Meteorology and Hydrology. CLIP has been conceptualized as mainly a virtual internship program which fosters pathways for professional development and employment in areas of science and technology for recent graduates of tertiary academic institutions in the Caribbean. For a maximum of 9 months, the CLIP focuses on assisting youth whose employment opportunities have been negatively impacted by the COVID-19 pandemic and other factors. CLIP implementation is made possible by the generous support of the American people through the United States Agency for International Development. Tonight, the topic of our speaker series is Climate Adaptation Technologies. And it is my pleasure to be joined by two Caribbean entrepreneurs in this sector, Dr. Ashley John and Mr. Elijah James. Before we get into our speaker series this evening, we would love to make this series as interactive as possible. And to kickstart our interactions, we'll be launching our poll. And our poll for this evening will pop up on your screen, and you will be asked the question, which area of climate resilience efforts in the Caribbean are you most excited about? And how do you hope to turn that enthusiasm into meaningful action? As you read through the options, please review them and choose one that resonates with you most. So I will launch the poll now. You should see your question on your screen at the moment. And you will have options A, green energy and cool technologies. If that excites you, then select A. You have B, eco-friendly habits and sustainable choices, and you could read through the details. C, speaking up for the planet as an advocate. D, protecting nature and wildlife. E, green entrepreneurship and creative solutions. Or F, your efforts will be geared towards educating and empowering others. So, and you have option G for those innovators who want to trailblaze their own new innovative concepts. So please select the option that suits you or resonates with you the most. And once you've selected your option, after our first speaker, we will share with everyone the results of this poll. Thank you so much for participating, and we hope to have some true engagement as we transition straight into our first speaker. So tonight, we are thrilled to be welcoming Dr. Ashley John as a distinguished speaker in the CLIP Speaker Series on Climate Adaptation Technologies. Dr. John has an extensive background in managing sustainable development programs and projects. Dr. John brings a wealth of expertise to our discussion. Having worked in the corporate, public, and private sectors, he has honed his skills in helping people to develop entrepreneurial mindsets, community development, and sustainable projects design, and management. As a facilitator of seminars and workshops, a lifestyle coach, and an entrepreneurship ecosystem builder, Dr. John is dedicated to empowering individuals and fostering innovation. Notably, Dr. John has made remarkable strides in developing the CMOS industry across the Caribbean, particularly in the Grenadines and Grenada. His efforts has been recognized through prestigious accolades such as the iNations USA honorary degree, the Exceptional Global Leadership Award, as well as Social Entrepreneur of the Year. Driven by a passion for helping others unlock their potential, Dr. John tirelessly supports unemployed and disadvantaged citizens, guided by the belief that everyone possesses the tools for success within their reach. Dr. John, welcome to our speaker series this evening.
Good evening, Crystal LeGrand, and thank you so much, ma'am, for such a great introduction. Thank you to CIMH, and a special mention to Dr. David Farrell and his team, Dr. Marcia Brandon and her team at COESL, and all other partners for making this opportunity possible to share in this CYLIP speaker series, an initiative that I really do applaud. To you, the persons in the audience, I really hope that by the end of our presentations today, that it would have helped you increase your knowledge and your capacity, and you would have taken off full speed developing your own business ideas. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Dr. John. And so before you start your presentation, let's ask you a Kickstarter question as to how long have you been in business?
Well, I've been in business for over 3 decades. I know that I look quite young still, but I've been there for a very long time. I started when I was at the age of 18, and I started by exporting fresh produce to the United Kingdom and Canada out of Barbados.
Absolutely. And then one more question we have is, what unique value does your business contribute to the efforts of climate resilience in the Caribbean region?
Well, our focus has been on the provision of soft climate technologies. And by that, I mean things like training and capacity building, designing, coordinating, and managing sustainable development projects. And I particularly in vulnerable communities, and of recent working in coastal communities to develop the mariculture industry across Grenada and St. Vincent and the Grenadines.
Yes, thank you so much for your contributions, and we are excited to hear your presentation. So I hand over the floor to you to present to our interns and listeners this evening. Thank you so much.
Again, thank you. Okay, let me say good evening again. And this evening we are going to present on climate adaptation technologies. Again, I'm Dr. Ashley John, a social entrepreneur, and probably a name that might not be familiar to many persons when you say social entrepreneur. So as we begin, I want to get right into that. So, very sorry, right. So the pillar of my business is basically built on SDG number 8, which is decent work and economic growth. And as it explains, it says, it contains this need for economic growth. We have to earn that money to not just today, but all days, full and productive and decent work for all. And that is something that we stand heavily on. So in designing a social enterprise, we had to really, put a lot of pillars in place, and we are guided also by some of the SDG goals, as you will see, number 3, good health and wellness. We also help with building sustainable cities. We help with the oceans and climate action. And number 17, we partner for the achievement of all the goals. Now, before I go into actually the other parts, I just want to start a minute to look at social entrepreneurship, probably a newer concept to the Caribbean. Basically, is a process by which individuals, startups, organizations, develop and find solutions that directly address social problems in their communities. So therefore, as a social entrepreneur, I would look around my community for problems that occur, and I would seek to solve them by creating businesses that would help solve the problem and at the same time, earn an income, not for myself alone, but for members of the community and other people as well. Now, this is very, as we're going to learn a bit in the presentation today, you're going to see why this was so important, right? And as we go into it, we will show you just a snippet of how we went about this process and what has made us who we are today. Constructive Solutions Inc. is based in Kingstown, St. Vincent and the Grenadines, and we have been in existence now for over 10 years in St. Vincent. However, this process started in Barbados, and I want to say a special thanks again to the Caribbean Center of Excellence for Sustainable Livelihoods, the team that is here. I see some of our partners here as well. For you are the reason that we are here this evening, and we want to say thanks again for that support over all of these years. We are supported by a number of other global partners, and you will see them in a while. And this is what makes it possible for us to be in existence. So in all of these years that I mentioned, I had help. And there's so many to mention, and I pinpointed the COESL and different partners that we have around the world. I must let you know that we also are part of the Caribbean Regional Fisheries Mechanism. And we would have worked in the past with the Sustainable Grenadines Inc. Canary would have partnered with them, the Nature Conservancy, the UNDP, and others. Now we're going to show you a few facts about mariculture. What we basically focus on is responsible sea moss farming. In the picture here, you see a damaged sea moss frame, which was caused by sea rise and strong currents. Now, we had some key considerations that we took into consideration when we were coming up with this idea. There needed to be responsible use of available marine resources. And this is a challenge that is across the Caribbean, and I believe globally, right? A lot of the Caribbean leaders are asking us to come on board with them to help us to utilize the marine resources that are available. For example, in St. Vincent and the Grenadines, there are over 39,000 hectares of sea space that they're trying to get utilized. Additionally, we work in Grenada, St. Lucia, Jamaica, St. Vincent and Grenadines, as I mentioned before. And what we would have realized is that there is an increase in their sea moss production of up to 300%. And that is a very great achievement within 3 years. However, we must let you know that sea moss farming is labor intensive. Most of the tasks we realized were done manually. Women outnumber men 4 to 1. Men do most of the heavy work, like the diving, and so on. And the women would do more the lighter stuff, the caring and the plants, and the harvesting and so on, the drying and so on. Now, these things are very important when you are designing a project like this. So what are we doing? We're basically doing 4 main things, which are the pillars of the blue economy. Because there's no one perfect solution, we need to take lots of small actions. We are looking at building new ecosystems for sea life, things like reducing the carbon footprint. Some people don't even believe that, and they see that happens, but it does. Just like the forest, the sea has its own forest. In governance, we look at building capacity and knowledge, helping people to manage their businesses better. Diversify the use of the sea space, so it wouldn't be one specific thing. Socially, we get the community engaged, and we are also providing health and wellness in the products that are produced. And economically, we want to also put into practice complementary capitalism. This was designed by Dr. Marcia Brandon of COESL and her team. And this has worked for us tremendously throughout the years. And this is something that I would like to highlight, that it basically means working together so that we can make a decent income, and sustainably all the time, not just once. We also create multiple streams of income, and we improve the quality of life for persons. Now we want to look at a few of the technologies that we use, the climate adaptation technologies we use within this responsible CMOS farming. Now, you would see here, we do the training, as was mentioned before. We also do the training on land, which is on the left. And then we do the training in the sea, which you would see persons by the sea. And then we do the monitoring and the evaluation of all the processes we would have taught. We go back with the farmers, we record data, we monitor their progress, and we help them to resolve some of the issues that they would have with the climate, the currents, the sea rise, and so on, and yields and stuff. And we also take data in terms of weights and yields per crop that we do. We have a process where we have to select the best areas for farming CMOS. Although it's named CMOS, it can't be planted anywhere. And particularly in the top left corner of this presentation, you will see the mangrove there. And those, we have scientifically has been proven that CMOS grows best in close proximity to mangroves. And mangroves also serve a significant role in climate change adaptation. And we use a method here. Sorry, just skip. Right. So we also discuss the areas with the farmers, as you will see, the bottom left and the top right. And then we also do testing of the water, the areas, and make sure that we have the correct spaces. And this is also done in conjunction with the fisheries division and the ministries within the islands. Our method of planting, a lot of persons may not be aware, we use what is known as rope and string. Now, a lot of people question this, but if you understood the process of CMOS, you would know that it is a water-based plant, and therefore it is the seawater that feeds this particular plant and not any coral or such as people might want to believe. What we have had to do though in recently is undergo training thanks to greenwave.org, and this was done virtually. They have been teaching us how to plant, differently and more efficiently in the sea without affecting marine life. We are trying to get away from the use of bottles, which you will see in the bottom left. And we are now doing a bottle-less planting, which is under the surface of the water. And then we go to our drying and harvesting processes. We want to make some changes here, which we're working on already. We want to take the CMOS from in the open atmosphere, and we want to place it in climate smart facilities, which are being designed and developed. So all of these processes that are happening on the outside will then happen on the inside, which is a globally accepted health and safety standard. And finally, we produce, after all of this work, we produce value-added products. We do two different methods of drying. We have been able to now come up with the air dry, which you will see at the bottom left. The top is where we submerge the CMOS in water for some hours. And then on the right, we have all of the different products that we have been able to test and prototype and made. Particularly, we must point out our CMOS wine, which is an original product globally. There was no one else in the world who produced this CMOS wine. And we worked with an entrepreneur here in St. Vincent to produce one of the best tasting wines ever. So that is a phenomenal development that we have been able to make in terms of producing CMOS wine in St. Vincent and the Grenadines. So some lessons learned while we were carrying out our social enterprise. As an entrepreneur, you have to be dynamic and flexible. Every day things changes and you just have to be able to bend and twist and get it to work. The aim is to always get it to work. And in doing so, you develop, you get your training, and we specialize in this CMOS, in this mindset, in entrepreneurship mindset, training. And, we want to ensure that people understand that this space that you are in, that you are responsible for, you manage that space, and if each person can do that, we would have a very sustainable livelihood being earned, and things will be much better for all of us. And that requires a mindset change to run a business, to manage a business, even to come up with a good business idea. One of the things that I've learned is that to focus more on solutions rather than the challenges, because the challenges will always come. But one of the things I've noticed as an entrepreneur is that when these challenges come, it brings out the best in you as an entrepreneur, because you come up with those solutions that possibly, if this challenge didn't arise, you might have never even thought about. There are the good benefits, there are rewards, and you build solid partnerships to get there. As I would always say, do not go it alone, right? And, you know, I stress a lot on benefits and rewards, because a lot of times we work really hard, but we do not celebrate. And we always encourage people to celebrate the small wins, the small victories. When you complete your setting up of your row, when you complete your planting, when you complete your harvesting, things like that, you must celebrate. And as you see the young lady here in the picture to the left, she was one of our trainees and an intern, and this was her first opportunity going into the farm. And she was so happy just holding CMOS in her hand. And finally, something that must never be left out when it comes to business. You must consistently work hard, and you will succeed. It is something that you must do. There's no shortcut to that. And again, with complementary capitalism, it will work when you work it. So I want to stop there. Now I believe there will be some questions and there will be some comments, and I want to pause there. I can speak all day on this, but we have to pause to allow you then to speak to us. So thank you so much at this point.
Thank you, Dr. John. And I can see the excitement that you have for this social enterprise that you have started. So first off, congratulations on the implementation and start of your social enterprise. And so, as mentioned in the comments or in the chat, we invite persons to either drop your comments and questions into the chat, and I will read them for you. If you have any, you can also raise your hand if you would like to unmute yourself and ask a question. As we have Dr. John here, you can ask your questions to him directly so that you can learn more about this social enterprise or any other question that you may have. So while we wait for our audience to either raise their hands or drop their comments, I would like to kickstart our questions for you, Dr. John, and start off with what specific practices or innovations have you implemented to ensure sustainability and minimize your environmental footprint?
I would like to start by saying I must give a lot of credence to specialized training in entrepreneurship mindset. You see, to do this, you have to have a particular mindset. You can't just get up one day and just decide, oh, I'm going to do this. You have to be mentally strong to do that. And you have to develop certain skills and emotional intelligence in order to run an enterprise. And that is something that we always tell people, let's put the idea aside for a minute. Let us make sure that you are ready to handle your idea, because one of the things that we found that shock a lot of entrepreneurs is that, hey, the product or the service that you are providing is not about you. You are providing this for someone else. So how do you handle feedback? How do you handle when somebody says no? How do you handle when you cannot get something done on time? You have to got the right mindset for that. How do you handle now? Oh, I'm at my own business, so I can do as I like, as a lot of people think that when you have your own business, you work easier. I'm here to tell you this evening, oh no, you don't. You actually work a bit harder. What you do have is that control of your time. So you can decide better and faster what you want, but it is a lot more work. Yeah. Secondly, we have a unique position in that all of the projects that we design are in alignment with the blue-green economy, and they help achieve the SDGs. Now, this is something that we found rather strategic, and as you understand business and the different aspects, financing and stuff, in order to get these things going, especially in our Caribbean region, you require financing, and you're not going to be able to get financing so easy being just a private enterprise. So when we design our projects, we have to design projects with these things in mind, that it must align with the national goals. It must be blue and green economy and with the SDGs, And there you find that you get much more help and much more support.
Absolutely. I truly appreciate that, emphasizing the fact that we must we're building our businesses not for ourselves, but for our communities, and aligning those things to positively impact our communities is very important. And so we have several congratulations in the chat and great presentations to you, Dr. John. But we have a question. And one of the questions is, what is responsible CMOS farming as opposed to irresponsible farming?
A very good question. I'm happy that that was asked. We specifically teach responsible. And if you remember in the presentation, we said that two things we want to do: properly manage our marine resources and diversify such use. So when it comes to irresponsible, it is a matter of how do you go about doing that process? Do you just walk around and pick up any old piece of wire and anything and just carry it into the sea? Do you tie these things onto the coral and then damage the marine life? Do you put agents into the sea that would damage the sea life, the fish, the lobster and stuff? These are things you have to know. Where should you plant? And this is something that is very, very, very important. Why? People are consuming the end product of our sea moss. And you cannot just, because it is a sea, you cannot just plant it anywhere. You have to have these specific areas that are healthy and that are, are approved, actually tested and approved for planting the sea moss. So if you go outside of that, it becomes irresponsible. Some people, for example, want to plant right there where people will bathe, or where the yachts and the speedboats will pass. We don't want to do that. That is not responsible at all. Yeah. Right.
Got it. That's great advice for persons that are looking to get into that space. And we have one of our audience members here, Ms. Jackson, saying that she's looking forward to planning responsible sea moss farming with you in her area in Antigua. So we definitely look forward to more collaborations with entrepreneurs who would love to learn more from you about sea moss planting and what you can produce from sea moss as well. And so we have one more question from our audience as well, is how are you protecting your creation and so your IP?
Okay, great question. At this time, first, we were focused on these processes. So we were creating the product, getting it tested, getting the approval from the local standard and brewers, branding it, which we have branded it into Happy Harvest. And then we had to work out a method in terms of working with the producer, because we work with another entrepreneur who produces other wines. So we are going through these processes one by one, and then we are going to then look at legally, copywriting the prototype and the procedure and so on. But it is not as easy to do because we're dealing with two different, we're dealing with an entrepreneur who produces other products. So it's a step-by-step process. We want to be sure first that the product is acceptable for consumption, that it is approved by the National Bureau, and people are actually, they like it, they use it, and they want to have it before we do the other steps. So right now, we know that all of those things have happened, and we are now looking at the legal method of controlling it. Even though that this is something kind of not very strict in the Caribbean, right? We want to still make sure, to bring some of those best practices here. I saw a question earlier about sargassum. I don't know if you want to look at that one quickly.
Absolutely. So we just had a question come in about the sargassum seaweed. So the question is, we assume that sargassum seaweed is an issue for sea moss farming. How have you and other farmers in the St. Vincent and the Grenadines been dealing with this? And the second to that question is, do you think external assistance is needed to deal with it? And if so, then what kind?
Okay, very good question. I would say for us, CMOS can be a menace. We we dread it. Let me say that to you know, it is a very, someday you go and it's not there, the next day it is there. It is just a menace. Now, the challenge with sargassum is that if it remains in the area where the sea moss is planted for too long a period, it will destroy every single plant, because as the sargassum it deteriorates, it lets off these gases that kills sea life. Now, if you understand sargassum well, when you see sargassum is floating and coming in, you can be very well aware that within that, there's a lot of dead fish, dead crab, dead lobster, dead. Anything in its path, it kills, right? It even damages boats and so on, trying to navigate through it. So what we have been able to do is we recognize that in studying it, that one, it floats because it is a plant that has been removed from the sea floor. So once it removes itself from the sea floor, it floats. So what we had to do was to find a way first to get that to pass over the farm and not in an area big enough to cover the farm. So when we are deciding on our farms, we look at the distance between the shoreline and where we place our farm, because we know that the current will lead the sargassum into the shorelines. So if we are too close to the shoreline, we know we're looking for trouble with the sargassum. So we are a particular distance out, and then we are a certain depth in the seawater. So once it comes, we set up the frames in a manner that it will float over the frame and go into the coastline. That is one way of dealing with it. As outside assistance, yes, is needed, but I believe too that one of the things that we can do even before we go outside is get people to understand the benefit of it. Though that it might be a menace, it is a great fertilizer. It's just a process you have to carry it through, and more people to me should be using it, you know, for plants and so on, rather than other stuff. But I don't want to go into much of that now. So if we can work on it from the community level first, then we can work on it. We could get the outside help to scale up what we're doing. And I must mention this evening that one of our entrepreneurs through the COESL, Mr. Joshua Fort, I know his business for sure, designed a CMOS liquid fertilizer, right? So he was one of the persons who's already ahead in working with this process. And I think that one of the things we could do is buy up some more of this fertilizer and try to cut down on the amount that remains around the sea and so on.
Absolutely. So Mr. Fort was a part of our first speaker series, and indeed, he did create a fertilizer from the sargassum seaweed, and so removing it then from our coastlines. And so absolutely, that is one additional solution that entrepreneurs can also explore, other use cases for sargassum seaweed so that we can remove it from our oceans, and thereby then clearing the way for projects like your own. So thank you so much, Dr. John. We will have you back at the end of the next presentation for any follow-up questions that persons in the audience may have. And so thank you again for your presentation. We look forward to seeing you a bit later. And I would like to share, as we move forward in our program, the results of our first poll. And so the results are being shared right now. So we have in the polls, our first results is that 31% of our audience this evening would love to get into the green energy and cool technologies. We also had 31% of you also respond to green entrepreneurship and creative solutions. We have one person going into the other space, so a true innovator here, going into a separate area of climate action. And we had some other results. So you can review the polling results as you explore your areas and continue to think about, as you hear your presentations this evening, what other practical steps you can take in moving your climate actions forward or your entrepreneurship ventures forward. Tonight, we have one more speaker for this evening, and that is none other than Mr. Elijah James. He is a versatile, creative, and entrepreneur that lives by the motto, aspire to inspire before you expire. He grew up in the Twin Island nation of Antigua and Barbuda, where he earned a career reputation as an accomplished marketing and management professional across several industries, including retail, technology, and hospitality. Elijah passionately believes that education and entrepreneurship are the keys to sustainable development in the Caribbean. This passion has led him to establish several organizations, including Volunteers United and the Business Circle, where he serves as business mentor and ecosystem builder within his community. As a technology innovator, he has earned global recognition from companies such as Google for his tech startup, The Local App. The Local App develops digital infrastructure to help consumers and businesses alike not only reduce their carbon footprint, but also get access to data, services, and tools to become more climate resilient. Mr. James, welcome to the CLIP Speaker Series this evening. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me. It's a pleasure to be here. How are you doing?
Great. And just like we did with our first speaker, we would like to kickstart your presentation this evening with two questions. The first question being, how long have you been in business?
So the concept for the local app came to me while I was traveling across the Caribbean back in 2016, 2017. And we moved the idea to initial testing phase by 2017, 2018, and we got recognized by Google in 2018 for the work that we were doing in terms of testing.
That is brilliant. And so our follow-up question to this is, what unique value does your business contribute to the efforts of climate resilience in the Caribbean?
Oh, so that's a great question. One of the things that we're very proud of, the local app hits on several different levels. Some of them I'll share with you throughout my presentation. But one of the key areas that we really are very proud of has to do with the fact that we provide access to information. One of the key components that has been driving behind the need for climate action and getting people involved is a lack of awareness. There are many persons who are not aware about the SDG goals. There are many who have bad habits that they may not know ways to change them. And our platform provides a way for people to collaborate and share ideas and connect with opportunities, even training, scholarships to become more climate smart and ready, and even finding jobs within various fields for climate work.
That is fantastic. And thank you so much for all your contributions within your local community and within the region. I will hand over the mic then to you to continue with your presentation.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Let me start off by, of course, again, thanking COESL and also the team at Caribbean Institute for Meteorology and Hydrology, and of course, the team from USAID for making the CLIP Speaker Series possible. So tonight, I want to start off by sharing a little insight about what is it that we do at the local app and how we basically help to address climate change and climate action within the region. So, as you introduced, my name is Elijah James. I am an engineer. I play a lot with software, and I also enjoy playing around with robotics. I'm also a community organizer. I love the environment. The Caribbean is a beautiful place to call home, and it is one of the reasons why I'm very passionate about doing what I can to preserve it for future generations and even for hopefully my retirement. I love tech. I've been a techie since I was like 10 years old when I got my first computer, and I've never looked back. And our team over the years has been focused on building digital communities and developing turnkey digital infrastructure to help people and businesses alike to become more disaster resilient. As most of us already know, the Caribbean is a hub for a lot of disasters, given our location and the being a small island developing states. And so one of the things that I came to terms with a few years ago was the fact that, again, climate change is one of the greatest threats, to our planet. And with all the work that happens in terms of COP and even all the works that our various governments are doing in terms of trying to achieve the Sustainable Development Goals, I had to sit down and ask myself the question, can we really achieve these goals? And the answer is yes, but for that to happen, we need to address a few problems. And that is how the local app kind of came into being. So the reality is most of us use the internet every day to figure out what do we want to do, where we want to go, even things and services that we want to buy. The question I had to ask myself is, why can't we use it to probably help us in terms of preserving the environment or saving the planet? No, all of these things are possible thanks to the infrastructure that is around us. And infrastructure for those, by definition, relates to the organizations and systems that we need, whether it be the roads and things around us, the energy grid to power our devices and smart homes, for the sustainable operation of anything in society or in an enterprise or business. And what digitization has done over the years is has helped us to improve efficiency, increase access, even helping people to collaborate and save on physical space. Now, some examples of digital infrastructure include the internet that we're using right now today. A lot of us use cloud storage for storing and accessing information and content whenever we want. We have our cell phones, we connect with mobile devices, use a lot of apps, and many of the things, including our Fire Sticks at home and other smart enabled devices. However, one of the things we need to consider with everything that happens in terms of digitization is that there's still, even though we've made some progress, there's still a lot of ways to go. And a lot of that has to do with the fact that there isn't just enough funding or investments that's focused on driving digitization. And a lot of that has to do also with the fact that we have a lot of legacy business models. They're basically people who have been making money out of a lot of the business systems that are established today. And they really don't want to see the change. They don't want to have to try to reinvent a new business model. They find something that's been working, even though it's harming the planet. They want to keep it going regardless of the demand is going to happen, because for them, they're not going to be here to deal with the consequences. So for our young people, one of the reasons why I do what I do with the local app is to try to help inspire them as much as possible so that they can think about the future. Because one of the things I always believe in is that if you want to predict the future, the best way to do it is for you to create it. But some other things that we have to keep in consideration when we talk about digitization is, of course, the cost and access for people to be able to access it. Sometimes the quality is very poor in a lot of Caribbean countries. The competition that available into the market, and we cannot pretend that we don't know that there's a lack of trust given a lot of the cybersecurity issues. There are a lot of people who still do not want to use a bank account or even do online banking just because of the concerns and fears that has happened over the years in terms of hacking, even from some of the most bigger and established companies. And of course, our education systems within the region are still struggling with providing. I could not believe that still today that IT, for example, is not considered a mandatory subject in our classrooms. People still have to choose between whether or not they want to do IT or a foreign language or another subject or a science subject. That should not be the case today, but fortunately it is. But as an engineer, I love to solve problems. And as an entrepreneur, one of the things that we learned in engineering, some of the strongest materials that you'd ever find in any engineering comes with fibers. And I love acronyms as well. And so I came with an acronym for what I thought could be a great way for us to solve many of these challenges that we have in terms of providing digital infrastructure to help us to address climate change. One has to do, we need to be able to facilitate easier business transactions. It's still very difficult to do business in the Caribbean. Even though we're literally separated by a few miles on water, it's easier for me to do business outside of the region than it is to do business with a country next door. We need to increase access to a lot of community data. Again, I live next door. I can tell you what's happening in all the other countries around the world outside of our region, but I still can't imagine that we turn on our televisions and we can't flip to a local channel in next door. I can't see what's happening in Montserrat or St. Lucia or down in Barbados or any of the other Caribbean islands that we're on. It's still a problem today. We need to boost capacity for STEAM innovations. We need to inspire people so that they can come up with solutions. We need to encourage investment so that, as I mentioned before, we actually have funding opportunities for you to be able to invest into ideas that could help, address the planet and help people to change their habits, because human beings, we're creatures of habit. We need to reduce harmful emissions and waste. How can we reduce our carbon footprint so we can save our environment and not be so damaging? And also we need to be able to share best practices and collaborating. because even though we are literally next door to each other, there are many things that we just don't share. And that's because a lot of times we just don't have a way to do so. And that's where the local app all came together. So our inspiration was we decided to create a digital community portal that would basically create or have multiple apps into one. So what you see on the screen there, even though it looks like the apps on a smartphone phone, that's actually the apps within the local app itself. Each one opens up to give you access to local information based on a specific location. And you can actually just change your country location. So though you're here in Antigua and Barbuda and you want to find out what's going on in Jamaica, you just switch it over to Jamaica, or you switch it over to St. Lucia or to St. Kitts, and the information automatically updates into that particular country. We also looked at the problems that a lot of businesses had in terms of they don't understand the technology. And while it took me studying for years or, going at it because I love technology, for a business owner to just decide that they're going to start a website or be able to build out a mobile application is not something that comes easy. So we decided to provide the support that helps even young people, as it is to today, tomorrow, go out and basically build on top of our platform. We also looked at the fact that the Caribbean doesn't have a Amazon for ourselves. Where do we want to go if you want to shop in St. Lucia or you want to shop across in Dominica or Vinci? How do I buy that CMOS wine without, having to be physically on the ground in the country? That's still a very big problem. And so what we've done is we created a shopping engine that we call Circle that helps people to be able to find things around them. Then we also looked at the issue of payments. You believe it or not today, it is still costly for you to be able to send money from one country to the other. Yes, we've had advances, and some countries have been advancing in terms of things like Bcash, what this central bank is trying to push. But we have actually looked at and explored opportunities where we can actually be able to have payments being done offline. So if you remember the storm that happened before, we had some countries in the Caribbean that actually had to fly in cash, physical cash, because the ATMs were not working and their infrastructure was down in terms of light or interconnectivity. And so they have to literally fly in cash to be able to continue operating. And we want to be able to change that as well. We thought about persons traveling, not necessarily having access to data. And one of the big things that you experience when you travel within the region, especially if you go to a country that speaks another language, it's very hard for you to understand and sometimes communicate or even share ideas because you just don't speak the same language. And so we've also included a multilingual feature into our platform. We decided to offer a lot of basic information for free, and we have been able to make it pretty affordable compared to what's on the market for persons to be able to list and get outside there into the market. And this has led us to be able to get recognized by Google, where they actually sponsored our domain and had it hosted and been promoting us around the world for a few years now, since back in 2018. And we're very proud of this accomplishment, really, really remarkable. We're the only country from the Caribbean that was being featured on their website completely, and we were just so proud. And when we looked at the platform itself and how do we actually impact climate action within the region, we looked at several opportunities, and I chose like the top 10 that I was going to lay out to share with you. And these are also potential opportunities for the interns that are listening in on this speaker series to be able to consider getting into. So we looked at how can we address adaptation so that we can address the challenges that are happening within the Caribbean. Resiliency, whenever we have a storm, how do we help our people to bounce back faster? Mitigation, how do we help to reduce our carbon footprint and reduce emissions? Mobilization, how do we get our people to start thinking about protecting what's happening in our environment? How do we encourage them to go do beach cleanups? How do we encourage them to stop littering? How do we encourage them to change their eating habits? We thought about advocacy. How can we help them to, again, change a lot of the bad habits that they're doing? And also, how do we encourage governments or even leaders of businesses to invest in policies that can help protect our future? So we looked at what we do in terms of e-commerce shopping, where we basically help to improve access to small businesses and help them to export. Because of the fact that we're located in different countries, we are able to basically help businesses who do not necessarily have access to markets or the money to be able to fly over to a new country. We act almost like a distributor on the ground for them in the different markets in which we operate. And also, we are trying to help many Caribbean countries to stop relying necessarily on imports and start thinking about many of the small businesses that are available. A lot of times people go for shopping and they search online, but because many of the small businesses are not available on Google or they don't even have their own website, it's very difficult for you to want to support them because you just don't even know they exist. And so with the local app, using our Circle shopping engine, we're hoping to make an impact in that space. Food security and reducing waste is another area that we've thought about helping in terms of resiliency and adaptation. Can you imagine the amount of food that goes to the landfill every single day because of the fact that either one, somebody wasn't able to consume it, and believe it or not, there's still a lot of inequality within our Caribbean region and many homes where some people have a lot of food, some people don't have none. Through our platform, we want to basically help to facilitate what you would call a circular economy or collaborative consumption, where basically persons who have excess food or they don't know what to do with their food, they can actually share with other persons who may be in need. And that's one of the reasons why we wanted to create this digital community, because having a virtual world allows persons to be able to better connect with each other. This is one of the great functions of digitization. It helps to remove the need for geographical barriers. Of course, this is something that I'm really excited about because of the fact that I love playing with robotics. It has to do with how can we encourage more persons to share instead of everybody trying to drive to get everywhere they want to go in a car, and we have all these long lines of traffic. Well, we came up with a solution that we call Fleet, F-L-E-E-T, just like a fleet of cars, a fleet of boats, or whatever. And the idea is to basically allow persons to be able to, have almost like their own Uber style where they can go get around transporting. But one of the things we want to test is, what if these cars were all automated and they actually had AI technology and robotics that were basically driving people, dropping them off? You no longer have to fight for parking or wait to try to, in long lines. You just get taken to your location, picked up, dropped off, and basically people share transportation and start using more to help reduce the emissions that we have, especially if these cars were green and could just charge themselves along the way. We looked at the way in which we can help improve access to data. One of the problems that you have with online information is that it is Google and a lot of the other online platforms depend on users to input this information. A lot of times the information is really outdated because the business either has closed or moved on. And unless somebody updates that information, it literally stays floating out there in cyberspace. Our teams on the ground basically update this information on a daily basis so that persons can rely on this information. And because we can kind of become a hub with all the different information in one location, it makes it super reliable and easy for people to be able to confirm information. Right now, if you want to figure out what's happening in Antigua and Barbuda in terms of calendar and events, or even in your own country, where do you go? Most persons normally tend to ask another friend. And so what we hope to accomplish with the local app is to make the local app your mobile partner that will basically be able to tell you about whatever is happening, wherever you are in the world. And of course, very passionate about this in terms of e-wallets and electronic payments. One of the perturbing things that I always see when I go into ATMs is the bin full of the receipts that get spit out by the ATM, or even a lot of the paper. I'm not a fan of paper, you can tell. When you go to supermarkets, you get those receipts and we just dump them. Why is it that we cannot have a situation where instead of you going to an ATM, for example, and sometimes half the time you create carbon driving down the road, going to an ATM, it's not working. Why can't I use my smartphone to be able to just simply withdraw cash and have it saved to my smartphone or even to a smart card? And again, being able to make payments to anyone from anywhere and not create that extra step of trash where you have people just throwing receipts on the ground or into a bin on the side. We have to be able to allow our businesses as well to be able to accept electronic payments, not just for the sake of speed, but also for security as well, with all the things that are happening within the region in terms of crime. Digital payments are definitely the future, and this is something that we want to facilitate through local pay, a feature that we have available on our platform. Of course, we can't forget about what COVID-19 reminded everybody. Digital during COVID-19, everything that seemed like it was impossible became possible. You couldn't work from home, became possible. You couldn't study from home, all that became possible. And again, like I mentioned before, it's because a lot of humans are creatures of habit. And so one of the things that we hope to facilitate through our platform, we are building, for example, apps for several schools and churches, for example. And the goal behind that is to basically help to improve access to education and basically empower young people so that they are aware that they're not limited to the careers in their own country. They can work from anywhere in the world. And again, as I mentioned before, one of the things the local app will be doing is allowing people to be able to use our platform to help build their own apps and websites themselves, so they don't have to do it from scratch themselves to be able to grow. We're also looking at businesses where we're able to help to provide 24/7 support to help small businesses to grow. And so whether they want support for export or they want support in terms of online, we can provide that to help reduce their carbon footprint. And of course, another great opportunity that is available in the region is how, when we store information digitally, not only do we reduce the amount of paper that we have to stock up or ends up in the landfill, but we also help to improve access. it's very difficult sometimes to pull up information from 3, 4, 5 years ago, especially if it's in a paper. The paper has faded based on the type of paper that's being used. If this information was easily available and available at your fingertips, being in electronic format, it makes it so much easier for us to manage information and content. And last but not least, as I mentioned, one of the things that we're very proud of is the fact that the local app, as a digital community platform, helps to raise awareness on a lot of opportunities. One of the things that we recognize during our rollout is that information is always around us. The problem is that it's just not available in a central location, not until now. So the local app will be coming to your island very soon. We are on the process of expanding across the region. And so we hope that the different services and the features that we are going to be putting into the market will help to inspire even more businesses to take climate action and help us to achieve the SDGs more seriously. And a conversation about technology and digitization would not be complete if we didn't talk about AI. AI provides a great opportunity for persons or communities to be able to monitor and test and keep track of what's happening in the environment and even explore new ideas. The reason why is because AI is able to crunch so much information at one time compared to humans. It gives us an opportunity, or partner in crime, to be able to figure out or solve the problems that we have around us, whether it be on energy or anything else that's happening. And with that, I want to say thank you for your attention, and I look forward to answering any questions that you may have on how the local app and you can be able to help bring climate action and resiliency to the Caribbean region.
Thank you, Mr. James. Wonderful presentation. And to kickstart our questions as our audience starts to formulate their questions and post them in the chat. So everyone listening, please share your questions in the chat, or you can also raise your hand. And once I identify you, you can unmute your mic and ask your question to Mr. James. So to kickstart the questions though, in your experience in building a business with digital technology at its base, which is more important, fully mastering the science at the very start, or learning as you go, but having a solid business development component, such as knowing how to write your business plan, marketing strategy, and adequate finance? Which of these are more important, in your opinion?
Okay, so that's a great question. And it's something that I really wish I had a mentor when I was younger to basically inspire me or help me to avoid some of the mistakes as I grew up learning in business. So one of the realities that I had to come to face it when I first started business was that when you went into the bank or you tried to have a conversation with a loans officer and you're trying to have a conversation about technology and they pull out an old Nokia phone, you realize the conversation is not going anywhere. So the first thing you need to come to terms with is that, everybody's not going to be afraid with technology. And so sometimes have a conversation goes completely over their head because they just don't know how to handle it. It's something new, it's different, no clue. And so what you have to do, because believe it or not, all businesses, no matter big or small, no matter how big they are, we saw how Netflix disrupted the market for many of, and even a lot of retail chains who, kind of had to close up shop because of bigger competitors online. But the reality is that all businesses basically close when they run out of cash. And so it's super important for you to ensure that you finance yourselves. And if you look at many of the tech giants, the reason why many of them are still around today is because of the fact that they actually had a runway, they had investor money to burn. Some of them have not turned a profit to this very day. Others, it took like sometimes about maybe 3, 4, 5, 7 years for them to turn a profit. But you need to ensure that you have adequate financing in place to be able to take the long run, because when it comes to technology, it is not always the universal unicorn tomorrow. You have to play the long game because technology is always changing and you need to have the runway to be able to do so.
Awesome. Thank you. And we're going to have you back with Dr. John to answer a few questions, either from our audience and as well as share your key takeaways before we wrap up. But we have here a rapid question for our audience. And so for the audience, we would love to ask you for a prize. So listen carefully. Dr. John mentioned what responsible CMOS farming is. So who can unmute their mics and tell us what is responsible CMOS farming? Everyone don't raise your hand at the same time. So anyone in the audience, we do have a prize for the person that can tell us what responsible CMOS farming is. Or if you're shy to unmute your mic, you can also type it in the chat, though we prefer if you would raise your hand and let us know the answer. So yes, we have Ms. Nero, and I hope I pronounced your name correctly. Please unmute your mic and tell us what is responsible CMOS farming.
He would have mentioned the different techniques as it pertains to when you're planting the CMOS, that you're not to be using the coastal areas where they have seabaiters. They're actually the different depths where you're supposed to plant the CMOS. They're not to like interact with the coral reefs and so forth.
Absolutely. So Dr. John, kindly unmute and tell us if this is the correct response to your responsible CMOS farming.
Yes, she has mentioned two of the key aspects of responsible CMOS farming. Thanks very much, Ms. Nero.
Yes, thank you, Ms. Nero, for having the courage to join us here. And let's check really quickly what your reward is. So give me 1 second. And Mr. James, maybe you can ask the next question to the audience based on your presentation, and so that we can have one more audience member then answer a question from you based on your presentation.
Absolutely. So I would ask the question, in what year did we get recognized by Google for the work we were doing in terms of digitizing in the Caribbean?
Oh, definitely. They would have to be paying keen attention to remember this one. So anyone in the audience who can tell us when the local app was recognized by Google, please unmute your mic, or you can also drop it in the chat.
See a couple hands.
First hand up, Stephen.
All right,
Hi, good
Mr.
night.
Stevens, good night. Yes, please share with us the answer to this question.
If I'm recalling correctly, was it 2018?
Correct.
Mr.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Winner.
Yes.
You got it right.
So congratulations to Ms. Nero and Mr. Stevens. Thank you so much for answering our question. So we'd like to invite both our speakers back to answer any of your questions that you may have. So if you have a question, please unmute your mic. You can ask it live right now. If you raise your hand, we can acknowledge you and then ask the question. I have a question from Mr. Lowe. And so his question is, should governments in the region shift to an open data approach in sharing data that can benefit the public? And I believe then, Mr. James, this question is for you.
Absolutely. So absolutely, and the answer is yes. The government, to a certain extent, through the various development agencies within the region, whether it's through CARICOM or other developmental programs, time and time again do engage and share data amongst each other. But I think the question in terms of open data has to do with how much of that data is actually available to the public, so that the public can actually even support it. So, for example, platforms like WordPress that has now grown to be powering over 40% of the internet was made possible because you had contributions from many different persons who had other ideas and been able to help to develop the platform itself. And I do believe with all the challenges, the reality is no one government, no one person, no one country has all the answers. And so we live and we have to deal with a lot of the consequences that come with the decisions that are made among us all the time. And as I mentioned before, the best way for us to create the future, to predict the future, is for us to create it. So I do believe, yes, we should be able to share in the open data about what's happening within our countries. But as you know, there are considerations that many governments don't want to always share information because they're afraid that it's going to, not necessarily sit well with their constituents for one reason or the other. But yes, the answer is yes, we should definitely have open data.
Absolutely. And another question for you, Mr. James. What do you think is the most, and now I'm seeing two questions for you. So let's start with the first one. So which part of the local is fully operational, right? The local app then is fully operational right now. And how do you earn revenue from your app?
Okay, that's a great question. Thank you for that. So the local app right now, we've been actually focusing on development work. Believe it or not, from the moment that we commercialized back a few years ago, we have been inundated with demands of persons to actually help them to build out their own application. So we've actually been working with governments, embassies around the world, locally, small businesses, small and large alike, supermarkets, hardware stores. They have been wanting us to actually build out their platforms for them because, again, there is a huge demand because of persons, the fact that, you know, persons don't understand the technology. Some of them don't want to take the time to learn it. And so our team has had to basically take on that role. We're in the process now of actually launching the several community guides that we've been doing, working on quietly in the background. And one thing that we're really excited about has to do with local pay. And the reality is that, again, we've been basically inundated working to help other people build out their things. And we generate revenue in several ways. One has to do with we charge for development work. We build apps and websites starting from $7.95 US. And then if you want to basically get listed on our platform, it's absolutely free, costs you absolutely nothing to register in our telephone directory. However, if you want to run ads and promotions, we charge a $49.95 US per year rate for you to get listed as a premium member, and that allows you to advertise for as affordable as $9.95 US per month. And if you want to be able to accept payments, so there's credit cards and other forms of payment, it can get as affordable as $19.95 US per month. So that's how we actually earn revenues to the platform itself. But a lot of the content that we provided, we recognize that a lot of people on social media were forming themselves into groups, whether it be buy and sell groups or places to rent or places to stay, because they're trying to find information. It's just not available locally. So they form the groups like those to be able to ask each other questions. And so we're basically going to help them in that regard, since we're going to be on the ground in the different countries.
And so one final question for you, Mr. James, is what do you think is the most urgent policy change we need to contribute to widespread use of your app across the region?
Oh, that's a great question. Thank you for that. I think it's still, I guess, as I mentioned in my presentation, I am really bothered that even though as a region, CARICOM, sub-region, OECS, that it is still so difficult for us to communicate and share or even trade amongst each other. Today, we still have something as simple as roaming. We're being charged roaming for going next door to St. Kitts or going across to St. Lucia. Like, seriously? Why should I have to come to SVG and feel as if that I'm in a foreign land? We're in the Caribbean. We're supposed to be one community. I think the policies that have been restricting us in terms of basic sharing of information or even being able to communicate amongst ourselves within the region need to just be forthwith. We're celebrating 50 years at CARICOM next week. It doesn't need to drop all the roaming rates. Everybody should be able to watch everybody TV channel on their TV station, so that we can actually engage and actually understand what's happening next door or within across the Caribbean. It boggles my mind that we are still in 2023 not able to flip on the television and see what's going on in our next door country. It's madness.
Absolutely. And I fully agree as well. We should be one Caribbean as promoted. Yes. And so, Dr. John, one final question for you as well. In your presentation, you mentioned complementary capitalism. Are there any gaps you can identify as potential areas for our interns or entrepreneurs to explore for that can either help or complement the business that you are currently doing?
Yes, indeed. I must say that this is something I've observed for some years now, that in the Caribbean, we have a case of many scholars. I mean, the numbers per year that graduate are very high. And then we have a very limited amount of traditional jobs available for these scholars. So you got a lot of frustration building up, brain drain, and so on. But what I am seeing as the opportunity is that if we can get a lot to these scholars, because each business needs skilled people. And I'm not going to debate on working experience and so on, but you need people with specific skill to perform certain tasks. We don't want to have square pegs in round holes, right? And we have a lot of scholars coming out every year, and basically they don't have anything to do with all of that knowledge that they would have learned in their degrees. And I believe that if they would partner with a number of us entrepreneurs, organizations, and so on, and merge their knowledge and skill with what we are doing, I believe that we could have far more sustainable businesses in the region. Now, in particularly with what we are doing, right? Health and wellness is being overlooked, by a lot of people. The non-communicable diseases actually is one of the most silent killers that we have around us. And guess what? CIMH actually helps deal with so many of those challenges that we have. Inflammation, diabetes, if you have high blood pressure, just that natural CMOS that comes from the sea deals with a lot of that. Even pain in your joints, that kind of stuff, it helps. And the challenge that we have is this: we can produce it, we know that now. We can produce it at a very good quality. We also have value-added products. What is not happening enough is we are not connecting locally and regionally to the market. And globally, we need to really fill that gap of market intelligence. So what I think that a lot of persons here can do is, for example, if they have skills in marketing, the same as Mr. James, in IT apps and so on. We want to be able, and this is just my vision. For example, I can go online now, go into Amazon, buy CMOS, and it comes to my door. Why can't I go on Happy Harvest app, buy CMOS, even if you are in Africa, and it comes to your door? Now, of course,
Exactly.
they're going to do a lot of things in between to make that happen, the supply chain and so on. And this is where I see the gap, that one, if you can get it right locally first, then regionally, and then go after it globally, we would do much better. Because a lot of people don't even know that because we live in the tropics, our climate is tropical. We have within our own region a lot of the cures that we need to handle our health and wellness. But because people are not aware, and I see a great opportunity, Mr. James, to partner with you in bringing this awareness to them, and even coming up with the idea, how do we get the CMOS from my warehouse right to home by using an app, without having to go through all of the different red tape and so on. I know we're going to have to work with the governments and the logistic companies and so on to get some of these things smoothed out, like cost and so on. And even, for example, like you mentioned earlier, if we can get the cost of the internet reduced, right, and more bandwidth, so that we can communicate with our buyers better and so on. I think that this is where I see a lot of the young entrepreneurs and scholars could fill these gaps. And we are ready to work with them. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. John. And so, Mr. James, we have one final question for you. So I will ask your question, and as well as give you an opportunity to give your final words before we close out the session today. So the final question for you is, how are you promoting your app currently and getting as many island territories involved?
Okay, so that's a great question. One of the things that we learned, because we actually had the app live when we were doing our MVP testing the market, seeing how people responded to it, and we didn't have to do any marketing at all. What we found was that because of the content that we had on the platform itself, so one of the first things that we looked at what is it that people were online forming themselves into groups into: jobs, events and activities, fetting, news, things that they want to buy and sell. And what we did, we offer all of that content absolutely free on the platform. So when the newspaper had 2 jobs and maybe Facebook had maybe 3 or 4, we had like 100, because persons were sending them directly to us because they realized that we were the hub for that information. And then what happened organically is that friends started telling friends and people started telling people, And so we didn't have to do any marketing whatsoever because of the content that was on the platform itself. Based on the feedback that we had during that MVP testing phase, persons wanted to have more features. They wanted to have the multilingual settings because there are some jobs or some countries they couldn't understand. They wanted to be able to have it in an offline mode so that even when they didn't have data, they could still access the information. They wanted to have personalized alerts so that they wanted us to build in user accounts for them so that they could have, okay, I only want to get alerted about the cruise ship coming in on a Tuesday, on the Wednesday. And so what we did just before the pandemic, we actually had pulled on the platform so that we could rebuild it because one of the big features that everybody wanted was people do not have space on their smartphones. So what we did, we actually created what is called a progressive web app version of the platform. So you don't have to download the application at all. You basically can open it on your phone or any smart device and have access to the information without having to go through the Google Play Store or the iOS Play Store. And so we are now rolling out all of those brand new features into the new relaunch. But as I mentioned, when we started off, everybody was like, hey, can you build this for me? Can you build this for us? And so we have been focused on that. But I know people have been asking me all the time, everywhere I go, like, yo, dude, what's going on with the app? What are you waiting on? And so we're actually in the process now of rolling back out because as Dr. John mentioned, for example, just doing business in the Caribbean, if you want to shop to figure out what is around you, where do you go? And instead of spending time driving around, burning gas, going to this place, it's not available, it's not there available, you should be able to simply type it in the local app, type it into Circle, and it will show you a map of everybody who sells that particular product and at what price. And so through that, our service and the infrastructure things that we're going to be doing, very soon, Dr. John, you'll be able to order CIMH and have it delivered right to your front door without any hassle.
Yes, and as well, Dr. John, any final words before we close out for this evening?
Yes, thank you so much. I mean, really, really, lots of food for thought. We never stop learning. I want to leave you with this to each of us, and especially to the younger entrepreneurs and those who are joining us. I think the biggest lesson I've ever learned in all my 30 plus years in being around businesses and being part of is never take a business or an entrepreneur for granted. Don't take it for face, at face value. It is never as easy as it looks or as it appears. And I see Miss Caroline Gordon in here from COESL, and I remember very well, some years ago, I visited the COESL office, and she was there working, and in my mind, it was like, wow, that looks so easy to do. Man, I would love to do it. And Dr. Brandon provided me with an opportunity to do an internship with COESL, and I took those words right back. Like that lesson has stuck with me all during this journey. And I want to say to each of us, right, that it is hard work. There are going to be the ups, there are going to be the downs, but there are going to be times also that we can celebrate, and we should celebrate. And I am proud to know that we have reached this far and we are going to go further. I know that very well. So I want to say thanks again. And remember, it is not always as easy as it looks. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. John. And Mr. James, your final words this evening as we round up our session.
Sure, absolutely. So once again, I do want to join Dr. John in celebrating and thanking everybody who's made this speaker series possible. I think this is an awesome initiative. We need to have more. And I want to, of course, leave it with the interns and the persons who we started the speaker series to inspire, is that, again, the future is yours. All the decisions that are going to be made today, you're going to have to live with the consequences as they come along. You can help make or decide what your future is going to be if you just invest a little bit of time thinking about businesses and solutions. We have so many opportunities within the region. Within AI, within agriculture, we have food security issues in the region. Within healthcare, we saw what happened during COVID. There's so much opportunities for technology, robotics, automation, STEM, STEAM. And if you just take some time and invest and consider and think about the opportunities, you can actually create an awesome future, both for you and for me when I decide to retire, so that how we can have a great and awesome place to call home within the Caribbean. The Caribbean is a beautiful place, and I want to encourage each and every one of you to think about just one solution that you could probably bring to the table for one of the problems that you see happening around you. And we can actually make the Caribbean an awesome place that everybody should be jealous to want to come to. We're already jealous. Everybody jealous of us and nice sunshine and everything, but we can definitely improve the life for our people here if we can help to eliminate a lot of the challenges around us. And technology can help us to get there. And don't be afraid to go digital. So once again, thank everybody for being here, turning out, participating tonight. I really enjoyed the speaker series. And again, thank you to the organizers. It was great. Thank you.
Yes, thank you all, both, in fact, Dr. John and Mr. James, for being here with us and doing some brilliant work in your presentations, and to our two courageous audience members who were answering the questions that we had earlier in our interaction. So Ms. Nero and Mr. Stephen, you both will receive, Ms. Nero, you will receive a 1-hour session with Dr. John, and Mr. Stevens, you will receive a 1-hour session with Mr. James. We will definitely look forward to having you connect with them so that you can ask them one-on-one any questions that you have, any explorations that you would want to have. They are a wellspring of knowledge. So we hope that you seize this opportunity to have that powwow session with them one-on-one. So congratulations, and thank you again for having the courage to come on and answer our questions. Thank you, and we have come to the end of tonight's CLIP speaker series. As we culminate, we would like to say a special thank you to the United States Agency for International Development, USAID, the Caribbean Institute for Meteorology and Hydrology, and the Strengthening Disaster Resilience in the Eastern and Southern Caribbean Project, and lastly, the Caribbean Youth Livelihood Internship Program for hosting this speaker series. Thank you for everyone who came out and joined us this evening. And we would like for you, as before you exit, to drop your key takeaway from this session in the chat. So before you log off, comment in the chat and let us know what resonated with you the most, and we will review those responses after the session. Thank you all again. My name is Crystal LeGrand. I am from COESL. It was a pleasure to be your moderator this evening. Have a safe evening, and I would say safe journey home, but we're virtual. So have a pleasant evening and good night.
The time is now for regional governments to develop and implement disruptive and forward-thinking program concepts, policies, and platforms that fast-track the development of a Caribbean technology economy. At the core of this, my friends, transformation must be the sustainable maximization of our most highly valued assets. You know them, and I know them. Our people, our ideas, our geography, our climate, yes, our climate, and our culture.